The search party for my 6-year-old son was called off. He's gone, the sheriff told me. My wife blamed me and left. I went back to the woods one last time and found his favorite toy truck. When I picked it up, a tiny folded note slipped out of the driver's seat. In messy crayon writing, it said, "Help me, Daddy." I froze as I kept reading. So, imagine this. One moment, your entire world is perfect, your 6-year-old son laughing in the backyard. The next, he's gone. Vanished. And then, the chilling truth starts to unravel. A betrayal so deep, it makes you question everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you. You see, Leon Bell, he was a self-made man. 38, built his construction company from absolutely nothing, turning these rundown lots into luxury homes. He was tough, you know? Came from poverty, never forgot that hunger. He prided himself on control. But all that control? It meant nothing when his little boy, Kenny, just disappeared. It was a Tuesday morning. Kenny was just playing in the backyard of their big ranch house. His wife, Dixie, she said she only went inside for 5 minutes to answer a call. 5 minutes. When she came back, Kenny was gone. No struggle, no witnesses, just his sandbox toys abandoned and the gate wide open. My gut would have been screaming. Leon? His first instinct was to tear Pine Ridge apart, board by board, until he found his son. He organized search parties, hired private investigators, even put up a $50,000 reward. For 3 weeks, he barely slept, just combing those dense woods around town, screaming Kenny's name until his voice was raw. And the local sheriff, this lazy guy named Douglas Clay, he seemed more interested in his coffee breaks. He actually said, with this infuriating calm, "These things happen, Leon. Kids wander off. Sometimes they come back." Can you believe that? But Leon knew Kenny. His son was cautious, even a little anxious, just like Leon was as a kid, trying to avoid his alcoholic dad. Kenny would never have left that yard willingly. As the days turned into weeks, something started to feel really off with Dixie. She was usually frantic over Kenny's smallest scrape, but now, she was oddly composed. And the phone calls, hours on mysterious calls, whispering, then hanging up the second Leon walked in. He'd ask, "Who was that?" "Just my sister, Claire," she'd say. But Leon called Claire himself. They hadn't spoken in weeks. The breaking point? He found out Dixie was secretly meeting Gabriel Potter. This slick real estate agent who'd been sniffing around Leon's business for months, trying to get him to sell prime land for pennies. Leon followed her to a diner, watched through the window as Gabriel held her hand, both of them laughing while their son was missing. Laughing. That night, Leon confronted her. "How long?" he asked, his voice deadly quiet. Dixie went white. "How long?" "What?" "How long have you been sleeping with Gabriel Potter while our son is missing?" She slapped him. Hard. But Leon caught her wrist. His grip was like a vice. "Don't you ever," he whispered, "lie to me again." But instead of breaking down, instead of begging for forgiveness, Dixie's face just hardened. This coldness came over her, something Leon had never seen. "You want the truth, Leon?" she said. "Kenny's gone and he's not coming back. The sooner you accept that, the sooner we can move on with our lives." Those words, they hit him like a physical blow. Not just the callousness, but the certainty in her voice. Like she knew something he didn't. It was chilling. Just 3 days after that horrifying confrontation with Dixie, Sheriff Clay calls off the official search. Can you believe it? Leon's standing there in that cramped police station office, and Clay, he can't even look him in the eye. "I'm sorry, Leon," he says, "we've exhausted all leads." The boy's gone. Gone? Leon just stared at this fat man behind the desk, feeling this dark, primal rage bubbling up inside him. Gone? That's it? That's your professional conclusion after 3 weeks. Clay shifts uncomfortably. "Look, I know this is hard, but sometimes sometimes they don't make it back. Animal attack, fell in the river. Nature's got a way of hiding things." Bullshit. Leon's voice was pure steel. "My son didn't just vanish into thin air. Someone took him." Clay gets defensive. "You got any evidence of that? Witnesses? Ransom demands?" "All we got is a missing kid and a lot of theories." But Leon, he's watching the sheriff's face, sees that nervous twitch in his left eye, the way he keeps glancing at his phone. "How much?" Leon asks, quiet as a whisper. "How much what?" Clay's face goes red. "Now you listen here, Leon. No, you listen." Leon leans forward, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "I know corruption when I see it. I grew up around dirty cops and bought politicians. Someone got to you, and I'm going to find out who." That evening, Leon gets home, and what does he find? Dixie packing suitcases in their bedroom. She doesn't even look up. "Going somewhere?" he asks. "I can't do this anymore, Leon." Her voice is steady, rehearsed. "Living with your obsession, your paranoia. It's destroying what's left of our family." He watches her, folding clothes with this mechanical precision, noticing she's only packing her own stuff. No family photos, no mementos of Kenny. Nothing. And where exactly are you planning to go? My sister's place in Denver. The lie just rolls off her tongue. Claire lived in Seattle, not Denver. Convenient timing, Leon says, right after the sheriff gives up. Dixie finally turns to face him, and what he sees in her eyes, it chills him to the bone. Not grief, not fear. Relief. Kenny's gone, Leon. I've accepted it. Maybe you should too. She just left that night, taking nothing but her clothes and jewelry. It was like she was erasing herself from their entire story. Leon stood in that empty house, surrounded by the echoes of Kenny's laughter, and the last bit of the man he used to be just crumbled away. In its place? Something harder. Something dangerous. The next morning, he drove back to those woods where they'd searched, not to look for Kenny anymore. He had a different purpose now. If Kenny was truly gone, if his wife had abandoned him, if the system had failed him, then Leon Bell would become something else entirely. He would become the kind of man who made people pay for their betrayals. As he walked those familiar trails, his mind was already working, cataloging names, faces, planning, calculating. Gabriel Potter, Sheriff Clay, his lying wife. They thought they'd won. They thought they'd broken him. They had no idea what they'd actually created. Leon's transformation, it wasn't some sudden burst of anger. It was methodical, precise. For 2 weeks after Dixie left, he just threw himself into research, treating her betrayal like a complex construction project. Every detail, every connection, had to be perfectly planned. He started with Gabriel Potter. Turns out Gabriel, he's 34, divorced, and way deeper in debt than his fancy suits and BMW let on. Leon found out Gabriel was struggling to make payments, that he'd only moved to Pine Ridge 8 months ago from Las Vegas, leaving a trail of failed businesses and angry creditors. But here's where it gets chilling. Gabriel's connection to Sheriff Clay. Property records showed Clay had sold Gabriel a parcel of land for a fraction of its value just 2 months before Kenny vanished. The exact same land Gabriel had been pressuring Leon to sell. Leon spent his evenings parked outside Gabriel's apartment, this rundown place that totally didn't match the guy's expensive facade. He watched Gabriel's routine, his habits, his visitors, his weaknesses. What he uncovered painted a picture of a man living way beyond his means, desperate enough to do anything for money. And that anything? It could include making a child disappear. The thought made Leon's hands shake with pure rage, gripping the steering wheel of his truck. But rage without purpose? Useless. He knew that from his own father's drunken violence. He needed proof, not just suspicion. And that proof came from the most unexpected place. One gray Thursday morning, Leon decided to make one final trip to those woods. Not to search, he'd given up hope of finding Kenny alive. This was to say goodbye to the boy who called him Daddy with such trust. The forest felt different now, darker, like the trees themselves were mourning. He walked the familiar trails, remembering how Kenny loved to explore, always finding some new treasure, a cool rock, a bird's nest, a colorful leaf. That memory led him to Kenny's favorite spot, a small clearing with a massive fallen oak. Kenny used to pretend it was a spaceship, a fort, a treasure island. Leon had spent countless mornings there, watching his son's imagination just transform that simple log. And there, partially hidden beneath a pile of autumn leaves, he saw it, Kenny's little red toy truck. Leon's knees just gave out. He picked up the small metal truck, remembering how Kenny carried it everywhere, making engine noises, creating elaborate stories. The truck was dirty, but undamaged. Like it had been carefully placed, not dropped in a panic. As Leon turned it over in his trembling hands, something rattled inside. The toy had this tiny driver's compartment that opened, a feature Kenny loved because he could put little action figures inside. Leon's fingers fumbled with the mechanism, his vision blurred by tears he refused to shed. When the compartment opened, a small piece of paper fell out. Leon unfolded it with shaking hands, instantly recognizing his son's careful crayon handwriting. The letters, still a bit uneven, but legible. "Help me, Daddy." The world just tilted. Kenny was alive. His son was alive, and he'd somehow managed to leave this message. But where? And how long ago? Leon examined the paper. The crayon marks were faded, but not completely weathered, so it hadn't been out there for the full 3 weeks. The paper was from a small notebook, like for grocery lists. And the truck's placement? Deliberate. Hidden, but not buried, positioned exactly where someone who knew Kenny's habits would look. His son had been right here, in this spot, leaving this message, hoping his father would find it. Which meant someone had brought Kenny here, maybe held him nearby, and Kenny had escaped long enough to leave this clue. Leon's grief transformed instantly into this cold, calculating fury. His son was out there, terrified, probably hurt, and the people responsible were just living their lives like nothing happened. As he pocketed the note and the truck, Leon's mind was already racing. This wasn't random. It was a message. Kenny knew his father would come here. His boy was smart, resourceful, just like Leon had been when survival meant outthinking adults who wanted to hurt him. But Kenny was also running out of time. If he'd escaped once, his captors would be more careful now. Leon had to move fast, but he also had to be smart. Standing in that clearing, surrounded by the echoes of his son's laughter, Leon Bell made a promise that would define everything that came next. He would find Kenny. He would bring him home. And everyone who had played a part in his son's disappearance? They would pay a price so brutal, their screams would echo through Pine Ridge for generations. The hunt was about to begin. After finding Kenny's note, Leon's investigation took on this insane urgency. He turned his home office into a full-blown command center. Walls covered with maps, timelines, photos connected by red string, like something out of a detective movie, you know? But this wasn't fiction. This was his son's life on the line. The breakthrough came from the most unlikely source, Ethel Knapp. This sharp-eyed elderly woman who lived 2 houses down from Gabriel Potter's apartment. Leon had been doing door-to-door interviews, just hoping someone had seen something. Ethel, she's in her 70s, spends most of her day watching the neighborhood from her porch. She remembered seeing a white van parked behind Gabriel's building multiple times over the last month. Funny thing about that van, Ethel said, adjusting her glasses. Had Pennsylvania plates, but the man driving it didn't look like he was from out of state. Too comfortable with the area, if you know what I mean. She described him, tall, thin, graying hair, and this really distinctive limp. Walked like he'd hurt his left leg bad. And he was always carrying a black duffel bag when he went into that building. Leon's pulse quickened. A man with a limp, Pennsylvania plates. This was more than he'd had before. He thanked Ethel and immediately drove to Gabriel's apartment, parking where he could watch without being seen. For 3 days, Leon just maintained surveillance, sleeping in his truck, living off coffee and vending machine sandwiches. On the 3rd night, his patience paid off. A white van with Pennsylvania plates pulls into the parking lot at 2:17 a.m. Leon watches through binoculars as a tall, thin man with an obvious limp climbs out, carrying that black duffel bag. The guy looks around nervously before heading toward Gabriel's building. Leon follows at a distance, watching him go in through a side door Gabriel had left propped open. Voices drift from an open window on the 2nd floor. Gabriel's apartment. Leon moves closer, positions himself right beneath the window, straining to catch fragments of the conversation. Getting too risky, Gabriel's voice, tense, worried. Should have handled it different from the start. Then the stranger's voice, gravelly, with a slight accent Leon couldn't place. The kid's note. If Belle finds. Leon's blood turned to ice. They were talking about Kenny. About the note. Which meant they knew Kenny had escaped, at least temporarily. Move him again tonight. Leon's mind raced. They were planning to move Kenny tonight. He had to act fast, but he also had to be smart. Bursting in now? That could get Kenny killed if he wasn't even there. He needed to follow the van, find where they were taking his son. Quietly as possible, Leon retreated to his truck and waited. An hour later, the man with the limp emerges, still carrying the duffel bag, but walking with more urgency. Gabriel follows him to the van, and Leon sees them having this intense conversation before Gabriel hands over what looks like an envelope. The van pulls out, and Leon follows at a distance, keeping his headlights off whenever he can. They drive through Pine Ridge's quiet streets, then out onto the rural highways that lead deeper into the forest. 20 minutes later, the van turns onto a dirt road Leon doesn't recognize. He parks his truck and continues on foot, using his phone's dim light to navigate the rough terrain. The van's taillights disappear around a bend, but Leon can still hear the engine, getting more distant. After walking for nearly half a mile, Leon sees lights ahead. A small cabin nestled in a clearing, almost invisible from the main road. The van's parked beside it, and Leon can see movement inside the cabin through the windows. Crouching behind a fallen log, Leon watches as the man with the limp carries boxes from the cabin to the van. Gabriel's there too, looking nervous, constantly checking his phone. But what made Leon's heart race? The sight of a small shadow moving past one of the cabin's windows. A child-sized silhouette. It could only be Kenny. Every instinct in Leon screamed at him to charge that cabin, to tear through those walls and rescue his son. But the rational part of his mind, the part that built a successful business through careful planning and calculated risks, held him back. There were at least 2 armed men in there, and Leon had no idea what other security they had. More importantly, he still didn't understand the full scope of this conspiracy. Gabriel and this stranger? Clearly working together. But who else? Sheriff Clay's suspicious behavior suggested the corruption went deeper than just a cheating wife and her lover. As Leon watched, Gabriel got a phone call. Even from his hiding spot, Leon could hear the man's agitated voice rising as he paced back and forth. What do you mean someone's been asking questions? No, he says. Clay called off the search. Who's been talking to people in the neighborhood? Leon's blood ran cold. Someone had reported his activities to Gabriel. Someone was feeding information to the kidnappers, keeping them one step ahead. We need to move faster. Yes, tonight. I don't care what Belle thinks he knows. The call ends, and Gabriel says something to the man with the limp that makes both of them look toward the woods where Leon was hiding. For a terrifying moment, Leon thought he'd been spotted. But then they just turned back to their packing with renewed urgency. Leon had learned enough. Kenny was alive and in that cabin, but they were preparing to move him. He had maybe an hour, possibly less, before his son disappeared again, perhaps permanently this time. As he carefully retreated through the woods, Leon's mind was already formulating a plan. But this wouldn't be a simple rescue mission. Gabriel Potter and his accomplices had destroyed Leon's family, terrorized his son, and corrupted the very system that was supposed to protect them. They thought they were dealing with a broken, desperate father. They were about to learn they'd awakened something far more dangerous. Leon Bell, he learned patience in construction. How to wait for the right moment, how to get every piece in place before the big move. But with Kenny's life hanging by a thread, patience felt like pure torture. Still, rushing in would just get his son killed. Back at his truck, Leon called the one person he trusted implicitly, Tyler Mullen, his foreman, his closest friend since childhood. Tyler grew up on the same brutal streets as Leon, and like Leon, he knew sometimes the law just wasn't enough. I need your help, Leon said when Tyler answered. And I need you to ask no questions until after it's over. Tyler's voice was instantly alert. You found Kenny? Maybe, Leon said. But I need backup, and I need it quiet. Within 30 minutes, Tyler was there with his own truck and a duffel bag Leon didn't ask about. Tyler's military background made him the perfect guy for a crisis. His loyalty? Absolute. What's the play? Tyler asked as Leon quickly briefed him. We take the cabin. Leon's voice was steady, controlled, but not until I know who else is involved in this. Gabriel made a phone call. Someone's been feeding him information about my investigation. I need to know who before we move. Leon handed Tyler a prepaid cell phone. I'm going to call Gabriel. Pretend I've given up. See if I can get him to reveal his contact. The call connected. Gabriel sounded wary. This is Leon Bell. A long pause. Leon, I heard about Kenny. I'm sorry, man. That's terrible. The fake sympathy in Gabriel's voice made Leon's jaw clench, but he kept his tone defeated, broken. The sheriff called off the search. Dixie left me. I wanted to apologize for what I said before about you and her. I wasn't thinking straight. Hey, no problem, Gabriel says. Grief makes people say things they don't mean. The thing is, Leon continued, I'm selling the business, the house, everything. I can't stay in Pine Ridge anymore. Too many memories. Leon could practically hear Gabriel's heart rate spike. Selling? You mean the construction company? Everything? The land deals you were asking about? They're yours if you still want them. Whatever price you think is fair. Another pause. Then Gabriel's voice got more animated. Leon, you don't want to make decisions like that when you're grieving. Maybe we should talk in person. Make sure you're thinking clearly. No, I've made up my mind, Leon said. But I do have one question. His voice hardened slightly. How did you know to call off your interest in the properties at exactly the right time? It's like someone told you I'd be desperate to sell. The silence stretched. Leon thought Gabriel might hang up. Finally, I don't know what you mean. Sure you do. Someone's been keeping you informed about my situation, about the investigation, about when the sheriff would give up. Leon let the accusation hang in the air. Leon, you're not making sense. I think you need help. I think you need to tell me who your inside man is, Gabriel, because I'm going to find out anyway, and it'll go easier for everyone if you just tell me now. The line went dead. Leon immediately called Tyler. They know I'm onto them. We move now. But as Leon started his truck, his phone rang. Unknown number. Leon Bell. The voice was gruff, unfamiliar. Yeah, you need to stop what you're doing right now. Who is this? Someone who's trying to save your life. Walk away from this, Leon. Take what's left of your family and disappear. Leon felt cold fury building in his chest. Is this the son of a bitch who took my boy? Your boy is already dead. Been for weeks. What you think you found was just someone playing games with your head. The line went dead. But Leon was already driving toward the cabin, Tyler following in his own truck. That anonymous caller? He'd just made a critical mistake. He'd revealed they knew about the note. About Kenny's toy truck. Only someone directly involved in the kidnapping would know those details. Which meant Kenny was still alive. As they approached the dirt road leading to the cabin, Leon's phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Stop now or the boy dies. Leon showed the message to Tyler, who just nodded grimly. Means we're close. They parked their trucks a quarter-mile from the cabin and approached on foot through the dense woods. Leon carried a hunting rifle he'd grabbed from home. Tyler's military training meant he was comfortable with whatever he had in his duffel bag. The cabin was dark except for a single light in what looked like the back room. The white van was gone, but Leon could see fresh tire tracks. They moved him, Tyler whispered. But as they crept closer, Leon spotted something that made his blood freeze. A small piece of red fabric tied to a tree branch near the cabin's back window. Fabric that matched the shirt Kenny had been wearing the day he disappeared. It was another message from his son. Leon pointed it out to Tyler, who nodded, understanding. Kenny was still here, or had been very recently. His boy was smart enough to leave clues, brave enough to take risks to communicate with his father, which meant Leon's son was counting on him to come. As they positioned themselves around the cabin, Leon made a silent promise to the boy he'd raised to be strong and clever. Daddy's coming, Kenny. And when this is over, everyone who hurt you is going to pay. The cabin was a trap, all right, but not the kind Leon expected. As he and Tyler moved into position, Leon realized the place was too quiet, too still. That single light in the back room? It cast shadows that didn't move. No footsteps, no voices, no signs of life. Tyler signaled from the front door, pointing to fresh footprints in the mud leading away from the cabin, deeper into the woods. Someone had left in a hurry, probably right after Leon's phone call to Gabriel. But Kenny's red fabric marker, that meant his son had been here recently. Leon went to the back window where the fabric was tied, peering through the dusty glass. It looked like a small bedroom, empty except for a mattress on the floor and a little table. But there, scratched into the wooden wall near the window, were letters carved with something sharp, Dad. His son had been in this room. He'd been close enough to that window to tie the fabric to the tree branch outside. Kenny was alive, and he'd been trying to communicate. Tyler appeared beside him, having circled the cabin. Building's empty, he whispered. But there's evidence someone was living here. Food containers, sleeping bags, and Leon. Tyler held up a small object. I found this by the front door. It was Kenny's other toy, a small action figure that never left his son's pocket. But wrapped around its waist was a tiny piece of paper, almost invisible. Leon unfolded it carefully, revealing another message in Kenny's handwriting. Barn, Red Roof Hill. Leon's mind raced. Red-roofed barns in the area? There were a few old farms scattered around Pine Ridge, but only one with that distinctive red roof visible from the main highway, the old Henderson place, abandoned for over a decade. I know where they took him, Leon said, pocketing the action figure. But as they prepared to leave, Tyler grabbed Leon's arm. Wait, listen. In the distance, Leon could hear it, vehicles approaching on the dirt road. Multiple engines, moving fast. They're coming back, Tyler said. Or someone else is. Leon's mind worked quickly. Gabriel and his crew? Or law enforcement? Either way, being found at the cabin would complicate everything. As the sound grew closer, Leon recognized the distinctive rumble of Sheriff Clay's patrol car, mixed with at least two other vehicles. Clay's coming, Leon told Tyler. Which means Gabriel called him. Tyler checked his watch. We can reach the Henderson farm in 20 minutes if we move now. But if we stay to face Clay, we lose Kenny. Leon's decision was immediate. Go. I'll handle Clay. Leon, if Gabriel's got Clay in his pocket, then I'll deal with that too. Leon's voice carried this cold finality that Tyler recognized from their childhood, from when Leon had faced down bullies twice his size. Tyler nodded reluctantly and melted back into the woods, heading toward his truck on a route that would keep him hidden. Leon positioned himself near the cabin's front door, rifle in hand, but not raised aggressively. He needed to play this carefully, appear cooperative while figuring out just how deep this corruption went. Sheriff Clay's patrol car emerged from the woods first, followed by two other vehicles, Gabriel's BMW and a black pickup truck Leon didn't recognize. Four men got out and Leon immediately noticed Clay was wearing a bulletproof vest and carrying a shotgun. This wasn't a welfare check. This was an execution squad. Leon Bell. Clay called out, his voice dripping with artificial authority. Put down your weapon and step away from the building. Leon stood motionless. This is private property, Sheriff. What's your probable cause? Probable cause? Gabriel's voice was sharp with nervous energy. You've been stalking me, making threats. Clay, arrest him. But Clay seemed more cautious, studying Leon's position and the rifle. Leon, we just want to talk. Put the gun down and nobody gets hurt. Leon laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. Nobody gets hurt? Sheriff, my son's been missing for over a month. My wife's run off with this piece of trash. He gestured toward Gabriel, and now you show up in the middle of the night with weapons drawn? I think someone's planning to get hurt, and it isn't any of you. The fourth man, who'd emerged from the black pickup, stepped forward. Leon recognized him instantly, the man with a limp from Gabriel's apartment. Kenny's kidnapper. This is taking too long, the man said, his voice carrying that same gravelly tone Leon had heard. We should have handled this problem weeks ago. And that's when Leon understood the full scope of what he was facing. This wasn't just about Gabriel wanting Dixie or forcing Leon to sell his property. This was about eliminating the one person who wouldn't stop looking for Kenny. They'd taken his son not just to hurt him, but to drive him to exactly this moment. Isolated, desperate, and seemingly helpless against a conspiracy that reached into the sheriff's department itself. But they'd made one critical error in their planning. They'd underestimated what Leon Bell was willing to do to save his son. "You know what, Sheriff?" Leon said, his voice carrying across the clearing with deadly calm. "I think you're right. It is time for someone to get hurt." The night erupted in violence, but not the kind any of them had expected. Leon's first shot didn't hit a man. It took out the headlight on Clay's patrol car, plunging half the clearing into darkness and sending all 4 men diving for cover. He deliberately missed them. He needed information, and dead men can't talk. But their response? That told him everything. Clay immediately opened fire with his shotgun, the blast splintering the cabin's front door just inches from where Leon had been standing. Gabriel scrambled behind his BMW, pulling a pistol from his jacket, while the man with a limp produced a military-style rifle from the pickup truck. This wasn't law enforcement. This was an assassination. Leon rolled behind the cabin's stone foundation as bullets shattered windows above his head. His military surplus radio crackled with Tyler's voice. "Leon, I can hear gunfire. What's your status for hostiles?" Leon responded quietly, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Clay, Gabriel, and 2 others. They came here to kill me. I'm 10 minutes from the Henderson farm. Kenny's not there. Place is empty." Leon's heart sank, but he forced himself to focus. "Keep looking. I'll handle this." A voice called out from the darkness. Gabriel, trying to sound reasonable despite having just tried to murder him. "Leon, you're outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now and we can work something out." Leon's response? He put a rifle bullet straight through the BMW's engine block. The car died with a grinding shudder, stranding Gabriel in the open. "Counter-offer," Leon shouted back. "Tell me where my son is, and I'll let you live long enough to confess to your crimes." Clay's voice joined the negotiation, but his words just screamed corruption. "Leon, you're interfering with an ongoing federal investigation. Stand down immediately." "Federal investigation?" Leon almost laughed. "Into what, Clay?" "Your side business in child trafficking." The silence that followed confirmed Leon's worst fears. This wasn't just about money or property. This was something much, much darker. The man with the limp ended the conversation by opening fire with his rifle, sending a stream of bullets that forced Leon to crawl along the cabin's foundation toward the back of the building. As he moved, he spotted something that made his blood freeze. Fresh tire tracks leading away from the cabin's rear, not toward the road, but deeper into the woods along what looked like an old logging trail. They'd moved Kenny while Leon was talking to Gabriel on the phone. His son was somewhere in these woods, probably in another vehicle, getting farther away with each passing minute. Leon's radio crackled again. "Henderson Farms deserted. But I found something. Fresh tire tracks and..." Tyler's voice hesitated. "Leon, there's a piece of Kenny's jacket caught on a fence post here. He was here within the last few hours." Which meant Kenny had been moved from the cabin to the Henderson farm, then moved again when Leon got too close. They were staying one step ahead, using Kenny as a lure to draw Leon into increasingly dangerous situations. But they'd also made a mistake by moving Kenny so frequently. They were leaving a trail. "Tyler," Leon whispered into the radio. "Follow the tracks from Henderson's. But be careful. This is bigger than we thought." Leon needed to end the standoff at the cabin quickly and get back to tracking his son. But 4 armed men had him pinned down, and they showed no interest in taking him alive. That's when Leon remembered the propane tank he'd spotted behind the cabin, the kind used for heating in remote locations. Sometimes, the best defense is a really big distraction. Leon worked his way around the cabin's perimeter, staying low, using the building's bulk to shield himself from the gunfire. When he reached the propane tank, he saw it was connected to the cabin's heating system. One rifle shot into the tank's valve would create a massive gas leak. A second shot, perfectly timed, would turn the entire clearing into an inferno. Leon positioned himself for the shot, then called out, "Gabriel, I want to make a deal." "What kind of deal?" "My life for information about Kenny. I'll come out unarmed if you tell me where my son is." He could hear the men conferring in hushed voices. Finally, Gabriel responded, "How do we know you won't try something?" "Because I'm a father who wants his son back alive, and because you've got 4 guns pointed at me." Leon waited, listening to their discussion. They were arguing about whether to trust him, whether they needed him alive, whether killing him now would solve their problems. While they debated, Leon lined up his shot on the propane tank. "All right, Leon," Clay finally called out, "come out slowly, hands visible, weapon on the ground." Leon's response? He put a bullet directly into the tank's valve. The hissing sound of escaping gas was audible, even over the men's shouts of alarm. They had maybe 2 minutes before the gas concentration reached dangerous levels. "Change of plans," Leon announced loudly. "You've got 90 seconds to tell me where Kenny is before this whole clearing goes up in flames." The panic in their voices was immediate and gratifying. These men were willing to kill a father searching for his son, but they weren't prepared to die for their conspiracy. "He's at the old mining camp," Gabriel shouted. 3 miles north of Henderson's place. Now shut off the gas. Leon smiled grimly in the darkness. The old mining camp. He knew the place. Abandoned copper mine, several buildings. Remote enough that no one would hear a child's cries for help. Thank you for your cooperation, Leon called back. Then he put his second bullet into the gas cloud. The explosion lit up the night sky like dawn breaking early, the fireball reaching 50 feet into the air, turning the cabin into an instant bonfire. Leon, shielded by the stone foundation and having covered his ears, was thrown forward by the blast, but emerged uninjured. He couldn't say the same for Gabriel Potter and his associates. As Leon picked himself up, he could see 3 figures stumbling away from the inferno, their clothes singed, weapons scattered. The fourth, the man with the limp. He wasn't moving at all. Leon retrieved his rifle and walked toward the survivors, his silhouette framed by the burning cabin behind him. Now, he said, his voice carrying the authority of a man who'd just demonstrated exactly how far he was willing to go, let's discuss the details of this mining camp. Sheriff Clay, his uniform smoking, face blackened with soot, looked up at Leon with something that might have been respect mixed with terror. Jesus Christ, Leon, you could have killed us all. Leon's smile was as cold as a winter morning. I still can. The old Copper Ridge mining camp. It just squatted there in the forest, like some cancerous growth, its weathered buildings clustered around the dark mouth of an abandoned shaft. Leon approached on foot, leaving his truck a mile back, moving through paths he'd known since he was a teenager, exploring these mountains with Tyler. Sheriff Clay's confession, given at gunpoint, had revealed the basic outline: Gabriel Potter and some unnamed partner buying up distressed properties, using intimidation and violence. Kenny's kidnapping? It was just to pressure Leon into giving up his prime development land for nothing. Clay had been paid to make sure any investigation went nowhere. But there were still pieces missing, and Leon suspected the worst was yet to come. Tyler's voice crackled through the radio. I'm in position on the ridge overlooking the camp. Count 3 buildings, main office, bunkhouse, and what looks like a workshop. Lights in the office building. Movement inside. At least 2 people, possibly more. Leon studied the camp through his binoculars. The office building's windows were covered with newspaper and cardboard, but he could see the flicker of light through the gaps. More importantly, he saw a small, uncovered window on the side of the building. And through it, the unmistakable silhouette of someone small. Child-sized. Kenny, Leon whispered into the radio. Office building, side window. He's alive. But as Leon watched, he saw something that made his blood boil. An adult figure moved past the window, and Leon caught a glimpse of their face, illuminated by the interior light. Dixie. His wife. Kenny's mother. She was in that building with their kidnapped son. Leon had to grip a tree trunk to steady himself as the full magnitude of the betrayal just crashed over him. Dixie hadn't just left him for Gabriel Potter. She'd been part of the kidnapping from the very beginning. She'd helped them take Kenny. Probably left the gate open that morning. Played the grieving mother while knowing exactly where her son was. Tyler's voice brought him back to the present. Leon, you okay? Your vitals just spiked. Leon forced his voice to remain steady. Dixie's in there. She's part of this. A long pause. Then Tyler's voice, barely controlled rage, that bitch. Leon, I can take the shot from here. Clean shot through the window. No, Leon's voice was steel. I want answers first. I want to know why. But even as he said it, Leon was starting to understand. Dixie had always been ambitious, always frustrated by their middle-class life. Despite Leon's success, she'd grown up wealthy, her family losing their fortune. She'd never adjusted to being anything less than rich. The property Gabriel wanted from Leon? It was worth millions in development potential. If they could force him to sell cheap, then resell to the right buyers. Tyler, I'm going in. If shooting starts, prioritize Kenny's safety over everything else. Copy that, Leon. Tyler's voice carried the weight of their long friendship. Be careful in there. Something about this whole setup feels wrong. Leon was starting to feel the same way. The camp was too exposed, too obvious. If they'd been moving Kenny multiple times to stay ahead of Leon's investigation, why bring him to such an isolated location? Unless this was exactly where they wanted Leon to come. As Leon crept closer to the office building, he noticed details that confirmed his growing suspicion. The other buildings showed no signs of recent use. But the office? It had been carefully prepared for occupation. Fresh tire tracks led to a hidden parking area behind the building. Most telling of all, that uncovered window that allowed him to see Kenny? It was positioned perfectly for observation from the ridge where Tyler was. They'd left that window uncovered on purpose. They wanted Leon to see his son. This wasn't a trap designed to capture him. This was something worse. A trap designed to break him. Leon's radio crackled with Tyler's urgent whisper. Vehicle approaching from the south. Black SUV, moving fast. Leon duck-walked to a position where he could see the access road. The SUV that emerged from the tree lean was expensive, government-issue looking. When it stopped in front of the office building, 4 people got out, all carrying professional-grade weapons, moving with military precision. But it was the 5th person who made Leon's world tilt on its axis. Sheriff Clay. He emerged from the SUV, very much alive despite the explosion at the cabin, and very much in charge of the operation. The man Leon had left injured and defeated was now coordinating with what looked like a federal task force. Tyler, Leon whispered, "We've been played." Clay wasn't a corrupt cop working for Gabriel. Gabriel was working for Clay, which meant everything Leon thought he understood about this conspiracy was wrong. The property grab, the kidnapping, even Dixie's involvement. It was all part of something much larger, far more dangerous than he'd ever imagined. As Leon watched from his hiding place, Clay spoke into a radio. "Bell's here, just like you said he'd be. What's the next phase?" The response came through clearly enough for Leon to hear. "Bring him inside. It's time he learned the truth about his son." Leon's blood turned to ice. He recognized the voice on the radio. It was his own brother, Sam Bell, who'd supposedly died in Afghanistan 3 years ago. The office building's interior was a masterclass in calculated psychology. Kenny sat in a corner, unharmed, but clearly terrified. Dixie paced near a makeshift desk covered with documents. Harsh fluorescent lights cast everything in sharp relief. And Leon could see right away that his son hadn't been tortured. He'd been kept as leverage. But it was the man sitting behind the desk who commanded Leon's entire attention. Sam Bell. 3 years older than Leon, and supposedly 3 years dead. Looking very much alive and very much in control. "Hello, little brother," Sam said, his voice carrying that same mix of affection and condescension he'd used when they were kids. "You always were too stubborn for your own good." Leon stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 armed men who'd escorted him inside after he'd surrendered himself for Kenny's safety. His rifle was gone, but his mind was still racing, still calculating every angle. "The funeral," Leon said quietly. "I buried you." There was a flag ceremony, Sam smiled, but the expression didn't reach his eyes. Military intelligence has its advantages. Sometimes a man needs to die in order to live freely. "And Kenny?" Leon's voice was barely controlled. "What is this? Some kind of sick family reunion?" Dixie spoke for the first time since Leon entered, her voice defensive, but totally lacking conviction. "Leon, you have to understand, shut up." Leon's command was so sharp, Dixie actually stepped backward. "I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to my dead brother who apparently kidnapped my son." Sam leaned back in his chair, studying Leon with that analytical gaze that made him successful in military intelligence. Kenny was never in any real danger. He's been fed, clothed, entertained. Hell, we even let him keep his toys. His toys. Leon's voice rose. "You mean the ones he used to leave me messages? The ones he used to tell me he was alive when you wanted everyone to think he was dead?" Sam's smile widened. "You always were the smart one in the family." "Yes, we allowed Kenny to leave those messages. We wanted you to find them." Leon felt the last pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. And the picture they formed? More horrifying than anything he'd imagined. "This whole thing," he said, "the kidnapping, the investigation leading me here, it was all orchestrated." "Very good." Sam stood up, walking around the desk to face his brother directly. "You see, Leon, I have a problem. Several problems, actually. I've been running certain operations overseas that require funding and resources. The kind of funding that comes from real estate development in growing markets like Pine Ridge. Leon's construction business. His property holdings. His entire life's work." "You could have just asked," Leon said. Sam laughed. "Could I? The Leon Bell I knew growing up would never have willingly handed over his business to a supposedly dead brother. You'd have wanted explanations, involvement, oversight. That wasn't going to work for my situation. So, you decided to destroy my family instead. I decided to motivate you." Sam's voice hardened. "See, I know you, Leon, better than anyone. You're not motivated by money or threats or rational argument. But you are motivated by family. By protecting the people you love." Leon looked at Kenny, who was watching the conversation with the wide-eyed confusion of a child trying to understand adult insanity. Then he looked at Dixie, who was staring at the floor, unable to meet his eyes. "How long?" Leon asked her. "How long have you been working with him?" Dixie's voice was barely audible. "Since before we were married." The words hit Leon like a physical blow. His entire marriage, his son's birth, the life he built, all of it orchestrated by his brother as part of some long-term manipulation. "Dixie was supposed to convince you to sell the business," Sam continued conversationally. "Move somewhere else. Start over. But you were too attached to Pine Ridge. Too stubborn about your success here. So, we had to try more aggressive methods. Like kidnapping my son. Like borrowing your son," Sam corrected. "Temporarily. Just long enough to make you understand what really matters in life." Leon looked around the room, taking inventory. 2 armed guards by the door. Sheriff Clay standing near the window. Dixie by the desk. Sam in the center of it all. And Kenny, his 6-year-old son, who'd been used as a pawn in a game Leon was only now beginning to understand. "There's just one problem with your plan, Sam," Leon said quietly. "What's that?" Leon's smile was cold enough to freeze blood. "You forgot what I learned growing up in the same house you did. You forgot what Dad taught us both when he used his fists to solve problems." Sam's expression changed, becoming wary. "Leon, you forgot that I'm not the same scared kid who used to hide in closets when Dad came home drunk. You forgot that I spent 20 years building a business that required me to be harder than anyone else, tougher than anyone else, more ruthless than anyone else." Leon took a step toward his brother, and both guards raised their weapons. "And you really, really forgot," Leon continued, his voice dropping to a whisper, "that I would do absolutely anything to protect my son." The explosion that rocked the building came from outside. Tyler's diversionary charge. Leon had signaled for it by leaving his hat on the windowsill. In the chaos that followed, as the lights went out and armed men shouted orders in the darkness, Leon moved with the precision of a man who'd spent 3 weeks planning for exactly this moment. The first guard went down to a hammer blow Leon had concealed in his boot, a tool that was both weapon and a symbol of the honest work Sam had tried to steal from him. The second guard fell to a move Leon had learned in construction site fights, a knee to the solar plexus that left the man gasping and helpless. Sheriff Clay reached for his weapon, but Tyler's sniper rifle ended that threat with a shot through the window that dropped the corrupt sheriff permanently. Dixie screamed and reached for Kenny, but Leon caught her wrist in a grip that would leave bruises for weeks. "Don't," he said, his voice carrying a lethal promise. "Don't you dare touch my son." Sam had drawn his own weapon, a military-issue pistol, pointing it at Leon with professional competence. "You always were too emotional, little brother. That's why you never would have succeeded in my line of work." "My line of work," Leon replied, "builds things that last. Your line of work destroys families." "Families?" Sam laughed. "Leon, you still don't understand. There never was a family. There was just you, your resources, and my need for both." The gunshot that ended Sam Bell's life came from an unexpected source. Kenny, only 6 years old, but already showing the survival instincts that ran in the Bell family bloodline. He'd picked up the first guard's dropped weapon and fired it with the desperate courage of a child protecting his father. As Sam fell, as the echoes of gunfire faded, as Tyler's voice called all clear from outside, Leon knelt beside his son and pulled the boy into his arms. "It's over, Kenny," he whispered. "Daddy's here now. It's over." But as he held his son, Leon looked at Dixie, who was cowering against the wall, finally understanding that her elaborate deception had collapsed. And his voice carried a promise that would define the rest of their lives. "For some people," he said, his words directed at his wife, but his meaning extending to anyone who had ever betrayed his family, "it's just beginning." Leon Bell had learned that family wasn't about blood or marriage certificates or legal documents. Family was about loyalty, about protection, about never abandoning the people who depended on you. Kenny was family. Everyone else? Just a problem to be solved. 6 months later, Pine Ridge had a new sheriff, Tyler Mullen. His military background, his absolute integrity, he was the town council's unanimous choice. And that old mining camp? It was converted into a memorial park for missing children, funded by the sale of certain real estate holdings that, let's just say, became available at very reasonable prices. Dixie Bell? She disappeared entirely. Though rumors, they still persist. People say she's been seen in various cities across the country, always looking over her shoulder, always moving. Some say she's running from federal investigators looking into a role in the conspiracy. Others whisper she's running from something else entirely. From the kind of man who never forgot a betrayal and never forgave. Leon Bell? He rebuilt his business, stronger than ever. But he also rebuilt his life around one principle that had never failed him, protecting the people who earned his loyalty, while making absolutely sure that those who betrayed that trust paid a price. A price that would serve as a lesson to others. Kenny Bell, he grew up understanding that the world could be dangerous, that people could be cruel. But he also knew, deep down, that there would always be someone watching over him. Someone who would move heaven and earth to keep him safe. And in the quiet mountains around Pine Ridge, the Bell family name carried a reputation. Spoken with respect by friends. Whispered with fear by anyone foolish enough to consider crossing them. Because some lessons once learned are never forgotten. Some debts, once incurred, are never forgiven. And some men, once awakened to their true nature, are never again to be underestimated.